This was something that came to my attention. A few of you guys had it. And it's actually stopping your ability to create relationships. And even more importantly, it's keeping you in the shadows. And it's keeping your relationship, how do I say, repressed. A lot of your emotions are becoming repressed, even in those relationships. So there's a few things that happen. So this is called asexual split. That's what we're talking about. And we're also going to talk about how you integrate that sexual split. Splitting typically happens when it happens in men and in women. It just looks a little bit different. So to give you a context of why this is important, because I really think that you guys might just think that this is some cool psychology class. It's really not. It's actually going to say a lot about yourself. This is a lot about me. This is something I've struggled with my whole life. And you may have noticed that if you're somebody that was raised with really strong values, you were also raised with an idealized sexual nature, not a real sexual nature, which makes your life a living fucking hell. It also will make your relationships damn near impossible, because you will either have what you call, or what Freud would say, is you have the Madonna or the whore. There's no such thing as the woman for you. Now, here's the problem with that, is that male nature typically falls into a category here, which is, if in men, what does it look like? It looks like the women that you enjoy having sex with are not the women you enjoy dating. And the same thing goes for women. There's the men you enjoy sleeping with, and then there's the men that make you feel safe. Here's the problem here, is that it's going to require you running away from your emotions your whole life. Why does this happen? I know a lot of us maybe think, well, do you know, sexual nature is developed and you can't have both worlds. That's not true. We're individuals. And a lot of us, and I think why you guys are here as well, you want to get in touch with your authenticity. And through your authenticity, there's a lot of integrity. Through that integrity, there's a lot of confidence. And that's kind of inherently the philosophy we have here. But there's also something very unique about that. Okay, you guys want to become unique? There's flip sides. Your life no longer becomes a data market chart. It becomes your life. And then you become 100% responsible for it, which means that there's nobody coming to save you, which means that you make the best judgments, and you make the decisions for yourself, and those decisions, you bear the weight of those consequences. But guess what? You have nobody to blame except yourself, and it's liberating. You become an exceptionally powerful individual. So for men, what does it look like? There's the girls you fuck, and then the girls you date and bring home. So it's really bad. I'll explain why it's really bad. Because they're not the same person, which means that when you're with the girl that you marry, you perform and behave differently than with the girl you have casual sex with. There's a problem with it, because one is actually more honest than the other. Because one you don't have to put on a performance act for, and the other you have to bring home in a display case to show to the rest of the world. So this was a very particular thing that we talked about in long-term dating, which actually stops a lot of people's long-term relationships, because they think that they don't constantly have to integrate both. I like to call it the animal and the spirit. You can go ahead and write that down. There's two parts of you, and they both need to be heavily considered. When you guys are raised in religious homes, you may notice that the spirit gets a much bigger emphasis than the animal, which leaves you incredibly dissatisfied, leading to things like promiscuity, porn, or prostitution, or some form of, I guess you could say, dark sexual expression, opposed to just expressing it with the people that you feel connected to, which is what we really want. Because this is really about gaining a deep, deep connection. You know, I think anybody here who's had a really deep connection has realized that they've had deeper connections with the whore more than they have had with the Madonna, more than they have had with their girlfriends. And this is something I've also realized, and it's like, well, who are the girls you get closest to? The ones that are batshit fucking crazy. Or the other way around. The ones that are so docile and so naive, you can fucking put your dick in another chick and come back. You're not satisfied. You don't respect it. You want out. This is not because of them. It's actually because of you. And that's where we're going to start. This is about becoming an individual, and this is the integration process. Guys, this has tortured me. Let me let you know how this has tortured me. I grew up Orthodox religious. And by this, I'm not the only person that's done this. I think we've all grown up in some sort of religious form or fashion, if you guys are born in the United States, or even in some places in Eastern Europe. There's ideals that we have in our life, the things that we want to bring home to our parents. And then there's the thing that you want to experience intimately. Which one are you more likely to communicate openly? It's a great way to see where you lack in awareness. Which one are you not so easily communicating to other people around you? Here's the thing. We have to bring this out of the shadows. And the only way to bring anything out of the shadows is by consciously bringing your attention to it and analyzing it with intention. When you can do that, then you can start understanding that expression works with your mouth just like it works with your junk. It goes both ways. And we have to understand what exactly is being communicated here so that you're not finding yourself in unfulfilled marriages, bullshit relationships, and finding yourself experiencing short-term relationship flings that make you feel alive for 5 minutes. Nobody wants that. And so a few things came to my attention. It's like, well, why does this exist? Why do people do this? Well, because there's a lot of darkness behind it. There's a lot of misunderstood expression that makes you feel like a bad guy, especially when you have a narrative that something about sexual expression is bad. So what's the point of it? Well, they're both designed to run away from pain. Bonding, responsibility, it's a product of fear. And I'll give you an idea of what it looks like. A few weeks ago, I went out with this girl, and here's something you guys should notice too, is that splitting also happens when emotions are in one place and the personality is in another. Now, there's a few things that are very interesting about this. This also happens with sex. Remember, it's when your emotions are in one place and your sex is in another. So guess what happens when you start speaking to her soul? Do you think you're going to get laid or not? You're not. Why? She's not integrated. Because she's afraid. She's never been able to connect as an individual. And what we're going to be learning about today is that splitting is a form of compartmentalization. What is compartmentalization? Compartmentalization means that you are putting yourselves in boxes so that you can experience and live your life. When does compartmentalization happen? When you settle for less, when you're surviving, and when you don't have time to think about anything important. That's when it happens. What do you guys really want? A satisfying, fulfilling relationship. Why is your relationship not satisfying or fulfilling? Well, because you're put in a whole list of boxes, which makes you look elsewhere. What's another way to identify a split? And here's another way to look at it. When somebody is sexualized, you cannot humanize them in order to experience sexual pleasure. Now, you might also find that it might not be your fault. You might even notice that your partner can't even interact with you as a human, because the more commitment you give her, what ends up happening? You start to trigger more emotions, and if she has a split, congratulations. That means that now you are in emotional territory. There's no sex in emotional territory. But there was plenty of sex before the emotions picked up. That's also another sign of a split. It's really interesting because in men and women it does manifest differently. But the truth is it's dark sexual in nature, and it needs to be brought into the light. And this is the only way to do it. It's part of ourself that we decide to run away from. So this happened to me a few weeks ago. I went on a date with a girl. She was great. Her personality, exuberant. Her ability to maintain eye contact, completely and totally there. Passionate, intelligent, funny, charming, charismatic, sexual. And what do I think? I'm like, wow, we're at the library. I met her. She's the one, right? My brain immediately starts putting her in a different category because my fucking head went out my ass. And this happens to me too. And so what ends up happening is we go to yoga. Now, yoga is a great way to bring out a lot of emotions. It's also a great way to shut down your sexuality and make you realize that those two aren't on the same page. And the best way so you guys can think about this is whenever I talk about a split, there is your animal nature and your spirit. Those are two different things. They both need two different kinds of communication, but they are both one and the same. That's what's really hard for us to understand, is that when one grows, so does the other. And I can give you a whole list of stories so you guys can maybe get an understanding of this, because it is really important, because this is very deep, and I want you guys to actually start noticing this so that you don't start rejecting yourself every 5 minutes. I need you to start realizing that most people can't give you what you want, and if most people can't give you what you want, stop twisting the wrist for it. You also need to be realizing that two sides of the same coin, it's not the same thing. When somebody's integrated, they need to be aware that they're both, I mean, I guess you could say the same thing. Yes, they are the same coin. But a lot of people don't have that awareness. So when you flip the coin, what happens? They go, oh my God, what am I? What just happened? Right? And then you're like, oh, whoa, no, it's fine. You're just a human being. We have duality to us. And they're like, no, I can't do this. You'll see me as a human. And if you see me as a human, I'll attach to you. And I never wanted to do that. And they'll run away. And then you're like, what the fuck's wrong with me, man? It was my emotions. That was the problem. It's like, no, your emotions triggered their split because it required them to be a human being, which has sex, which has emotions, which has spirit. We're accumulation of all of these things. So it's really good to test it too. So what ends up happening is we go to yoga, and as we get out of the yoga studio, I'm somebody who's very integrated, which means that I'm aware of the fact that my sex has emotions, it has values, it has a characteristic that is human behind it, and vice versa. I can go to and from. I can speak openly about sex comfortably without sexualizing them, while also speaking about values and building a life, which a lot of men are like, what? How does that work? And it's like, you guys don't just stumble on good sex, okay? You don't just do that. You don't just stumble on a good partner. You intentionally create it with your ability to ignite the parts of them that are in you. You bring it out to life. You bring it to life. And what ended up happening is I thought I was going to go home, and she even told me before the yoga class, what'd you tell me before the yoga class? Come over, we'll take a shower together, we'll spend the night. And I'm like, this is great. I get to do yoga, I get to have tantric sex, and maybe we'll start seeing each other, etc. What do you think happened after the yoga class? Shut down. All of her sex disappeared instantly, a different person. Now, if this happened to me 2 years ago, I'd be chasing, I'd be trying to do some shit, I'd be trying to slither around, I'd be trying to go backwards. No, I realized something. She's not integrated. Her emotions are in one place, and her personality and sex are in another. And this is where a lot of people fuck up, is they continuously chase the initial person. You guys need to understand something. They need to do that themselves to bring these two together. I'm sure you might be upset. Well, if I didn't fucking talk about real things, I would have got laid. Sure. But you also would have been used. So a few things came to mind. And one of them was, as I realized, I said, hey, what's going on? Like, you completely shifted. You changed. Now one way, now you said this earlier. Now you want this. Totally cool. I'm not going to force anything. But I just kind of want to understand what's going on. What did I see? Glossy eyes, emotional tantrums, regressed behavior. That's actually typically a sign of borderline personality disorder. But that's the clinical term for it. I don't care about the clinical term. I want you guys to understand something about human nature. She split because there was too much pain in both. So I ended up asking her the question. I said, well, what's going on? Why is this place, why is there emotions here and then the sex here? And it's like, well, truth be told, she would have used me if we engaged in sex, and I would have used her. I would have been bonding with myself, thinking that I was making love to a person. I wasn't making love to a person. That person was in 2 different rooms. And by the way, one version was incredibly exuberant and charming. The other version was a regressed baby. A regressed baby. Now, you guys understand this is also in you too. It just looks differently in men. Now, most of us do not have our sexual beast integrated when we see a beauty. This is what creates pedestalization. Do you know what creates pedestalization? When you deem one behavior better than another. When you deem sex better than values and values better than sex, that is when a split happens. When the spirit is better than the animal and the animal is better than the spirit, that's not the case. They deserve equal eye-to-eye contact, because if not, you will find yourself incredibly dissatisfied in your relationship, incredibly dissatisfied in your life, going on power trips one day, and the next day losing your fucking mind, going on emotional tantrums. You want to be able to create consistency in your behavior. Now, the beauty of doing this, guys, is that you start to create abundance, because you start to function as an individual, not as a guy who got lucky and met a hot girl at a club. You start to become somebody who goes, holy shit, this is here for a reason. This person is open and activated. I'm open and activated. We're going to trust one another that we'll do this together. Typically, what do we do when we meet somebody that for once meets our mentality, our worldview, our sexual expression, our spiritual feelings? We just go, immediately, you're the one. And what's the problem with that? The problem with that is it's not a choice. It was just like a matter of time before you met somebody, because that is truth, just a matter of time before you met somebody who also did the work that you were doing and actually has a relationship with all parts of themselves. That is what integration is about, having a relationship with all parts of yourself. Now, there's another part of this which is really interesting, which is a lot of the time we actually have this nature shut down with people that we really love. I want you guys to ask yourself a question here. The woman of your dreams, the wife, what comes to mind? The children, the family, the experiences you guys share, going to the water park together, going to Disneyland, right? Holding the kids, she's holding them, you know. And then there's the other girl, the girl you have that one night stand with. How different are they? And I want you to write this down. How different are they? Which one do you pull more towards? Which one sexually ignites you more? And I did this before and I realized, I was like, holy shit, I have a bigger split than any client that I know. One of the things you guys need to understand is you're going to need patience when doing this. You won't get your answer by the end of tomorrow, but the whole point is that you guys understand that you want honest expression. How would you feel if you completely behaved for a woman, behaved the way that you thought she wanted to behave, and she behaved the way that she thought you wanted to behave because you guys were both your fucking pedestalized versions of each other? As you guys kept in the shadow, the dark sexual nature, the dark past, the parts of you that express yourself authentically. You know what happens? At first it's love making sex missionary with the lights off. And then you're like, what the fuck's going on? Why do I not feel satisfied by this? This lost its mojo like this. Well, guess what? you might realizing you're looking at other people or trying to put yourself in different places. It's because you've actually hid it in the shadows. It's a part of you that needs to be brought out to that queen that you want to marry. Because guess what? If she doesn't have it, she's not your woman. And I spoke about this with a client the other day. People think that sexual preference or sexual expression is a compromisable expression. Guys, it's like the amount of kids you want to have together, the way you want to raise them, how you want your home to be, how you want the rules to look. That's how damn important it is. Because you guys got to be able to live today like you died at 12, but also like you have the rest of your life. Integrate those two. Your life becomes better not when you're like, okay, I die at 12. You'll become purely hedonistic. But if you go, well, I always have tomorrow and I live in this moment forever, you'll never do anything. So what do you guys have to do with those two things? You guys got to integrate them together so that you can create a better philosophy for yourself and for life, so that you can take action when it presents itself. And you can also understand that if today is shit, you can process and you know that you're gifted with tomorrow. So there's a level of balance that we create between these two things. So I really noticed that this is something that a lot of people don't talk about, and it's something that needs to be brought into the light, which is why is it that sexual nature is easily compromisable? But the second values are there, we immediately bend our knee down to it, like as if it's bigger than us. You're killing yourself emotionally.